Sweet. I see we are alive and well. What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another Spellborne stream. Again, very excited to have yet another insightful discussion around crypto, NFTs, gaming, all that good stuff. And look, I know people are probably going to slowly start pouring in here in today's stream in a few minutes, but just want to check in very quickly. Go see what's going on, man. How are we doing today?
Good morning, Basa. We're doing good. We are overworking. We are working so much on so many features, and I'm super happy that a lot of them are in their final stages, and we'll be like at towards the end of this month. We have at least five major features going live, including the iOS and Android apps for public. So I'm super excited about what's next, and we're on track for almost all of our things. And yeah, super excited about this conversation as well as always. How are you doing?
Dude, I'm doing well, Ghosty. I know, and I feel like the bi-weekly cadence is actually perfect because this allows more than enough time for narratives to build, and on top of this, I really like being able to let things kind of flesh out and then talk about it. So really excited once again to be hosting this with you. Personally, I've been well, man. I think obviously the markets right now. I kind of consider it in shambles. A lot of the whole recent meme coin fiasco made a lot of things go sideways. But especially for builders like yourself, Gosi, I'm pretty sure this stuff doesn't phase you, and it's just extra noise and distractions on the timeline. But look, I really love today's topic regarding mind share versus attention in gaming. I chose this because I wanted to discuss this with you, one, and two, I feel that this is kind of one of those important things to gauge when it comes to everything related to crypto, right? And Ghost, I don't know if you saw, but Kaito AI, it's been one of the more newer info-fi metas that we've seen. But something that I've learned from their product is attention is the number one currency, and so I feel this same concept can apply to almost every angle, every sector that we've seen in crypto. And and that being said, like I would love to just get right into it, right? But uh I guess before the big questions, right, I want to just hone in on this two differences alone: attention versus mind share, especially in the perspective of gaming. Like, Ghosty, how do you kind of see these two? Like, do you think one leads to another? Does attention lead to mind share, or are these two things completely separate and different from each other? Ghosty, what are your thoughts here?
So attention. To be honest, I think the word mind share is something that just Web3 has come up with. It doesn't really exist in the Web2 space. And in terms of the attention and the mind share being the two different topics, they kind of are to an extent, simply because you know Web3 cannot pay attention for more than 5 minutes to something specific. So if we talk about mind share, it's consecutively multiple people paying attention to specific something specific. So it does kind of work out well. In terms of gaming being related to this, in terms of Kaito, how Kaito will be performing, um, I would say I'm not that particularly bullish on Kaito itself, like the how their token will perform. The idea is very good, but the token itself, I'm not sure how it will perform. Simply because I don't see that much utility that they've given till now, and it just depends upon how they are able to kind of take it from here. But I do trust the team. They have done they have done a good job, and they've built a solid product. So I can easily assume that they will be able to make something good out of this. And in terms of how Kaito relates to gaming, so when the moment you add a token, it already all gets related to the word mindshare, simply because when we talk about tokens, when we talk about how well these tokens perform, it's mostly based on the exact thing that mindshare is, to an extent. And I say to an extent because there are many tokens that don't show up on our Twitter feeds, and yet they are performing so good. And there are so many tokens that they show up so much, and yet they are performing poorly. So it's not directly related, but it is a kind of related to an extent, but that extent is very, very small. When we talk about the mind share part being important, so it is important in creating trust. Like when we talk about projects that have a good amount of mind share, um, anyone who sees the chart, anyone who sees how many players or how many users are paying attention to that specific product, they just get more overall kind of trust in the product inherently. And they're able to kind of consider that someone else has done the due diligence, because in Web3 people don't really like to do it on their own. They just assume that someone else has done it. So I would say that that's how it kind of relates to different things. These are very, very separate things, and they
Right.
perform very well on their own. But when we talk about how they relate to each other, it's very, very limited in many sense. Like
Yeah.
you can look at the G7 token. So
Mm.
G7 was almost on my timeline every single day. Like I've seen every single influencer post about it because it's a good product. It's a good product. It has it has the attention, it has the users, but the token isn't performing well. Like I think it went from 150 million FDV to maybe like 30. So maybe it's the market conditions, maybe it's the mindshare part isn't really spending any money based on the market. It's a lot of things, that a lot of variables here and there, but yeah, it's kind of interesting to an extent.
It's well said, Gosi. And so, backtracking a little bit to your takes regarding tokens, right? Does this mean that for gaming, that if we are adopting mindshare via tokens, it is likely to lead to such a short-term result, aka people dumping, interest falling off because there's no longer that reward per se, right? So, first, my question is that the route? And two, to follow up, what is a solution or an alternative in building that mind share organically?
So, when we talk about charts, when we talk about how well, uh, different products have performed in this specific, I would say, in the specific bull market of this year, or how long it has been, uh, I haven't really seen that many tokens perform well, regardless of the mind share. Like even the product had hype, the token is down only. If even the product was good, the token is down only. The only product that I've seen do and perform well is hype. And it's mainly because they have the revenue, and they are able to use that revenue to kind of channel back into the token itself. And they are able to generate value and as well as demand, because the product is good and all these things are good. And as we always say, like, if you build out a good product, users will come. But to keep those users, you need to make sure that you're able to incentivize them well, and hype has done a great job in that. So when we talk about the mindshare part, now hype has a lot of mindshare, a lot. And this mindshare is not only from users but also from projects. Like projects want to be listed there, projects want to get that specific access to that specific community that hype has already created, just mainly based on the token price. Like if some other product launches tomorrow and they have a better pricing structure, better chart than hype does, then they will perform better. So it's mainly related to the price itself. And as we rightly say, like your best marketing tool in Web3 is your price. Like it can be the token price, it can be NFTs and so on. So for games it's very, very difficult and very, very different, because many games don't really have the main collection. They have in-game items, so you can't really put a price, or kind of create hype based on that pricing model. And if we talk about like the token itself, for games, and for many other tokens, when we talk about how different games are from a product like Hype, or any similar tool that has been performed really well, games have a specific audience. And for example, when we talk about exchanges, every person in web3 can use an exchange. Not every person in web3 will play a game, and they will not every person in web3 will be interested in playing a game. And not every web2 person would be ready to spend on a token inside a game. So your audience becomes very, very limited. And that's kind of the main reason why most tokens don't perform well, simply because there isn't enough demand. And this demand doesn't, it's not like the games aren't good. There are many good games in web3 right now, and they are building good products, and they are doing well in web 2. Some of them are doing very well in web 2, but they don't really have any mindshare in web 3. So for example, there's I think there's two games that have done more than 500K in web 2 revenue. They're on the top stream charts, and I've never seen anyone talk about them on my Twitter feed. And
Mm,
they're both web 3 games. They're on Steam, they're web 3 games. They maybe have in-game NFTs, but they don't have a token. So as soon as you create a token, you kind of get those hype builders on Twitter that just are promoting your token, because they buy the token and they see the value, they want to share the value with their following and so on. So as you rightly said, like when you create a token, all of a sudden you enter this specific field of mindshare. And when you have created such a token, you also take a lot of burden to maintain that mind share, because it can be very, very difficult for many to maintain it. But at the end of the day, for games, it's much more difficult compared to a DeFi product, simply because not many Web3 players, or not many Web3 users are interested in playing video games, as they consider most of these games to be lower quality compared to Web2 counterparts, simply because Web3 games haven't had that much time yet. And it's like, when you look at a Web3 game at the moment, they're like the first iteration of what it can be. And so these games are the worst they can be at the moment.
right.
This will only get better from here. So there are a lot of things that are kind of acting towards how tokens are performing. Like for gaming tokens, it has went down only.
Mhm.
All gaming tokens have been down only. I don't see any chart that is on the positive side. And and this is primarily also shown in the whole market except for Hype. So you can imagine, it's important that you build out a mind share, like you G7 did, or any other product that was just trending on Kaito on the feed and so on. But it's also important that you generate enough revenue that you can kind of put that back into the token. Because at the end of the day, the loop is basically this: players will play your game, they will spend in the game, you get revenue, you use that revenue to kind of improve the quality of the token, and kind of maybe improve the game, add new features, bring in more regions, advertise the game, essentially improving the token price in multiple ways, not directly but in different ways. And as the token price increases, more players get interested, and that creates a loop. But that loop is very, very difficult to create, because there are so many components that are needed here, and they need to be perfect. And that level of perfection is very, very difficult in web3, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. And Gosi, if I'm not mistaken, I feel like you're talking about off the grid, um, with these titles, right, on Steam. So let's use them
No,
as for,
I'm
or
not
is it?
talking about off the grid.
Oh, okay. What titles are these?
I will have to find those. Let
No,
me just look it up.
yeah. Sorry, I don't mean to distract you like that. I genuinely thought you were talking about off the grid because they, like, at least from my timeline, I only see Inhuman and maybe Cairo still occasionally talking about, and I know they still share some game clips from Off the Grid. But like aside from those two creators, I haven't really seen Off the Grid being as big, or the tension was on them when they were first coming into the space, right? But I wanted to use them as an example because they're an interesting one, right? It was almost like they were kind of born in native Web3, but the way that they marketed to the Web2 gaming audience, like they even attracted like Shroud. I think I even saw human playing with like Scump, like a lot of like these big FPS guys. And
Mhm.
so considering that, if Off the Grid were to release a token, and I like how you're describing your previous take, like it's this perfectionism that I feel that must be accomplished with a token in the playbook now. It's almost impossible, right? And it's so hard to maintain that. And I'm not even a builder myself, but I can see it, and the results show in the price action. It shows in the way the team operates, right? Would this kind of be like the wrong route per se if Off the Grid were to pursue a token?
There is no wrong route. There is no right route simply because no one has been able to create the right route. But if we talk about off the grid specifically, you don't see it on your Web3 feed. But if you play the game, you realize that it is much more popular than it was before. Like when I started playing the game, I couldn't find a lobby like during the early days when all the Web3 was so hyped that there are so
Wow.
many big creators.
Wow.
But now, if you play the game, you'll find lobbies instantly, like full lobbies of players who are, purely Web2 and they're just playing the game for fun. So it's not really about how you target, or there's no specific guideline on what to do here, simply because no one has been able to create a product that is good enough for Web2 while also creating a token that has been performing well in Web3. Because as soon as you create the token, there is an expectation that your Web2 success will directly relate to your token price, which is very very difficult to implement, which is very very difficult to do. But yeah, off the grid has been performing well. The games that I was talking about, they're mostly in the idle game genre. So one
Mm,
of them is like, I think it's a MOBA or something, and the second one is an idle game. And they both have performed really really well. Like in terms of my type of gameplay, I don't really like any of them. Like I hate both of those games simply because they're not my type. But I've seen the Steam reviews and they're pretty good, and they have been generating revenue. They have a lot of users, they have a lot of players, and they're purely Web3. But you never see anyone talking about them simply because there is no token. So the mindshare part will only come as soon as the token is. So, for example, when Off the Grid launches a token, you'll see all of a sudden everyone talking about it, and they'll act like they've been talking about it for months, when they only created like a single tweet about it in like 1 year. So it's always like this. It's simply, um, again, I'll just reiterate, there's no right way to do it. For example, for us,
right.
we are trying to create a good product. Then our next goal is to bring Web2 users from the games that have a similar audience. These can be Pokemon, these can be Pokerog. Both of those games have a huge and very very active audience, and the best part is that that audience loves to participate in the development of the game, so they're perfect for Web3. They love to participate in decision making, they love to play the game, they're addicts, they play the game for hours, and they love to trade. Like most of the players that get banned in PokeMMO, the only reason that they get banned is because they try to do real money trading, and PokeMMO does not allow that. We allow that. So our product is basically what they want.
Mm,
And for us, what we have been designing the game in a way is that we are able to target both of them. So what we do is, like, if a Pokemon player today starts playing Spellborne, they see that the game is similar, but it's not exactly the same. So they need to have, or they need to learn a new few things. But when they realize that all the limitations that were present in Web2, you kind of are able to overcome that in Web3, because simply because open markets. Like, if I am a free to play player and I catch a very good monster, I can make money from the game simply based on my luck and skill. And when we talk about open markets, our market economy is kind of a mixture between Poke MMO and Eve Online. So multiple guilds can create their own tokens and so on, and it's perfect for degens to kind of uh, take a position in the game economy without having to actually play the game. And the way it is designed, the way it is being created, I think our method also has a very very high chance of succeeding, simply because the way the game is designed, it has that those magical moments that can be present in the game that make crypto games what they are. And that is something of a once in a lifetime chance where you can uh, be popular, where you can be where you can make money just from playing a game. For example, when Axie became popular, the main marketing tool for them was that the players were making money. Their players were able to feed their families. Their players were able to uh, kind of generate revenue from playing a simple game that was cute. And it's not a bad thing that your players might extract from the game. They should. For example, when a player sells an NFT inside Spellborne, we don't really complain about it. We say that congratulations, you made revenue in the game, and you had fun and you're still playing. For example, anyone who has bought an apartment in the past, or had sold it for any reason or whatsoever, they're still playing the game because they like the game. So at the end of the day, when those players they play the game, they get a rare monster, that is a shiny all of a sudden, and they get lucky with it. They can sell it for a very very high value because there are other players who are willing to spend that money, simply because they see that the game is good, and simply because they see that the economy has a good amount of potential, and simply because they see that they can make money in the future. Like when you look at Axie Infinity, when you look at all these games, why people were spending in these games were because they saw the prices go up, and they assumed that the prices will always keep going up. Of course, there's a top limit for everything, and that happens in every game economy. So as long as we keep creating content, as long as we keep adding new features, and as long as we are able to bring those web 2 users into web 3, those specific Poke MMO and Poke Rogue players, uh, our community will be able to kind of help in building out the game. Our community will be able to you know um, market the game for us
Mm,
via those magical moments where someone just played the game for 4 days, they caught a shiny and they sold it for a huge amount. They made a lot of money within 4 days of playing the game. And this exact thing already has happened. The marketable moment wasn't there simply because the player couldn't sell their monster at that time. The first shiny that was that a player got in the game, he played for literally 4 hours. He played for four
wow.
hours and he got the
Wow.
shiny. And
Wow.
there are players who were waiting for months. So the magical moments are already here. And there's so many things that are possible in the way that we've designed the game, because we have spent our time in playing web 2 games. We have spent our time in looking at and playing web 3 games. And the way we've designed this, we want to make sure that those moments are created. There is potential for speculators, there is potential for actual players, there is potential for free to play players, and we
Right.
want everyone to play the game because it's meant to be a cozy game that you can play with your friends, family, anywhere, on any device. But also kind of have a backtrack that any monster that you capture, uh, it could bring you a lot of money. That's the best thing about it. Like, you play a game for fun and it can bring you money. So
Right.
that's the best marketable tool, and that's the best sort of mind share you can have right now. All the mind share that the games have is related to the token pricing, and as soon as the token goes down, the mind share is simply lost. So the way we want to change and improve things is that when the market of the game performs well, it gets mind share, not the other way around, like the
Mm,
game getting a mind share and then the market performing well. That's not something we want to do. So there are a lot of factors, and I would say a lot of games have a chance of succeeding, A lot of games are doing things very, very differently, and there's no right way to do it. Like, we
Right.
are doing it in our method, of the graders doing in theirs. And everyone has seen different levels of success in already. And I'm very, very bullish on, a lot of games that are experimenting things, that are trying new things, instead of just copying games straight away.
Yeah, yeah. Man, Ghost, you just laid out a ton of valuable takes, and one thing I want to at least hone in on here is I imagine the timing of token launches specifically for gaming projects are so important, right? And this is again a scenario that I have in my head as you were speaking. I imagine that if right, if Bitcoin has this another next leg up, I don't know what it's going to be, how is it going to look like, right? But I feel like this escape velocity that Bitcoin has to the outside markets, people that are not in crypto, right? When people start seeing Bitcoin reaching these crazy numbers, right? And maybe this also tackles like that gaming audience at the same time. That imagine if off the grid were to then launch the token, right? And maybe like it's a main menu notification for the web 2 gamer where it's like, hey, like you can claim, I don't know if we're going to call it tokens or however we may hide it behind the scenes, right? But that that type of excitement, right, where it's like the news outlets are matching what we're seeing here in these games. Suddenly web2 users are being adopted or acquired via the token, right? And then it's again creating this little flywheel effect where it's like we suddenly got all these new custodial wallets created, and now off the grid has a mesh of web2 and web3 audiences, right? Like I'm curious, do you also see this type of I don't even know if I can call it marketing, but it's like kind of just this scenario where these things need to sort of be aligned, right? And with that timing or with that scenario happening, that timing to release a token or launch a token is there, right? I'm curious to know your thoughts on that, Gosi.
Yeah, it's very, very important that you time things correctly, and the timing is not based on the market conditions, but based on your own conditions. Like, if you're creating a token, and the token doesn't have utility, the token doesn't have a number of users to create escape velocity, then you won't be able to succeed in the short run. Of course, in the long run, you may, but when we talk about games such as off the grid, for example, launching a token and so on, and acquiring users from Web 2, uh, there's just a simple sentence that I can say to that. That is that players or Web2 users are not scared of tokens. They are scared of scams. So when you create a good product, obviously they already realize that it's not a scam. So you have already built out that level of trust, and then they would be very
Mm,
much open to earning
mm,
tokens.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
when you look at many Web3 tokens, there's simply pictures of dogs and so on, and the Web3 or the Web2 audience on TikTok, they realize that it's a vehicle to make money,
Right, right.
but they realize that it won't be able to sustain itself simply because it's a box of glass. You
Mm,
put a
mm,
hammer on it and it will break. It doesn't really have any weight to it. When you talk about games being different, when you talk about products being different, they have a weight behind them. For example,
mm,
if someone
mm.
plays Spellborne and someone is playing just for the sake of having fun or having that level of nostalgia, because a lot of players, what they do is they come back again and again, and they come back after weeks. So like they don't play regularly, but they just play like 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and they play for a very, very long period of time when they're playing. So like
Right.
these sessions, like personally, even I had these sessions with Pokemon where I didn't play the game every single day, but when I did play it, I played it for hours because I just was fulfilling my nostalgia. So when you look at the audience types, when you look at how games are building, how games are performing, and how token prices are related to Bitcoin and everything, they are, but also the level of escape velocity that you need to build out a good gaming token, it depends upon how many Web2 users you have, how big of a audience is present in your game itself. And it's very very important that, for example, you can't really compare on chain games at the moment. Like, for them to reach escape velocity, it will be very very difficult, simply because even web3 players are not interested in playing on chain games. So there's different levels of access that these games have to these players, and how these games can perform based on how Bitcoin performs. But games do have the potential to just run it back to the top without the whole rest of the market performing well, simply because they
Right.
have a good product behind them.
Yeah. And just to relate this back to what we're seeing in the sentiment of crypto right now, I feel, and I was just discussing this on a spaces prior to this one, is not only do I wish, and I think it's gonna happen soon, is liquidity is good. Not only gonna rotate, but this attention economy, this attention currency, it's also going to rotate back into real builders, real products, right? And I feel in the lens of gaming that if you don't have a good game, then you're almost out of the picture immediately, right? And so I feel like the number one thing is to build that right product, which is that good game, right? But I again, where my mind goes to after that is, well, if the game is good, and let's say a game does not have that mind share or attention, right? What should these projects or what should these teams focus on? Because going down routes like a token, and we've been discussing it so far, it can backfire. It can shoot you almost immediately in the foot. And so how do you think Gosi projects that are new, gaming projects specifically, if they're trying to obtain mindshare, if they're trying to obtain attention, right? Should they go Web 2 first? Should they go Web 3 first? Should there be a blend, right? What is the, again, not that there's a right way, but what's a strategic way to approach that?
uh, it's as simple as user acquisition. So when you look at games, so for example, if I build a normal product in, Web3, like it's a decentralized exchange or something similar, and the product isn't live, it's very difficult for me to acquire users. When we talk about games, and I can show a trailer regarding the game, and I can get people hyped regarding the game without having to build out a lot of stuff. So when we talk about games being able to get that mind share, and when we talk about new games on how they acquire a mind share, so going into the token very early on is a very big mistake. Regardless of how and how much utility the token has, it will perform bad. It will perform bad. Every token performs bad in Web3, except for the ones that have so much revenue, except for the ones that are called Bitcoin. So it's either Bitcoin or someone who has a ton of revenue that can kind of, keep that value sustained. So, and this is very very important. Like, you can have a very very hyped token for very very hyped projects, but if the product behind that hype isn't there, it will fall someday. And when you look at tokens, when you look at games, yeah, most games want stability. Like, it's a very very kind of, difficult situation for most Web3 games. Like, when you look at Web2 games, all players want is stability. When you look at Web3 games, this the instability is what drives attention towards your game. Like, it's the, rapid token price increases, or it's the rapid burning of NFTs, of tokens, and so on. That's what creates that, short term attention that games can get from these Web3 elements. But if you talk about Web2 games, most of them just have players that just want to play the game regularly with their friends, regardless of, what they're earning in the game. So it's very very difficult for many games to do it, and it can backfire in every single way. Like, it's like Murphy's law. If things can go
Mm,
wrong, they will go wrong.
mm,
If you build out a game, you go to Web2, you get an audience and you have a very good game. All of a sudden you launch a token, the audience does not like it, they'll leave, they'll find another game. If you launch a Web3 game, you launch a token, you'll get so many of those, token holders in your Discord, that they kind of scare the actual players away.
yeah.
So it's a lose lose in every situation. But the best part is that no one has figured out it yet, but there will be people who will be able to figure it out. Like
Mm,
for example, our method, it could work, it could also not work. It's all an experiment. So for us, it's imperative, it's important that we do whatever is in our power to make sure that our experiment succeeds. That's what our team is doing. So currently, for example, for Spellborne, our focus has been create marketing content for Web2, and that marketing content should showcase gameplay. Focus on
mhm,
gameplay, focus on
mhm,
how beautiful the game is, focus on the nostalgic elements, and then introduce smaller Web3 elements, as in trading. You
mm,
introduce them to trading, they get used to it. So now, for example, someone has played the game, they got a monster, and that monster has a huge stat, and they sell it for bond tokens. Now they have tokens. What to do with them? They can sell them, or you can introduce them to staking. They can stake the token, and they get glory points, which they can use to get a lot of items in the future. So at the end of the day, you want to be able to create steps for your audience to take at every single step. So like this should be always something like, what's next, because that's the essence of Web3. The token price isn't derived from what the product currently is, it is derived from what it can be. And for games, it is important that you constantly keep shipping. And that's why we have made it a habit to do weekly updates instead of monthly updates, because monthly updates felt like a year in Web3. And even weekly updates feel like a month in Web3. So for us and for many new games that are trying to get that mind share, um, I would simply suggest build out a good product, get your core audience. And it can be anything. It can be token traders, it can be a Web2 player, it can be a Web3 player. Learn what your core audience is. You don't want to spray and pray, because whoever sprays and prays never gets any player. You can see this with most Web3 games, most Web3 products. Like if the game doesn't know who they're targeting, they won't be able to succeed. So you need to know your audience. For example, for us, it's uh, a huge audience based in Brazil, a huge audience based in France, a huge audience based in Philippines. And these players, they have played Pokemon games before. Most of the Pokemon fan made games are built in Brazil and France and so on. So for us, we know the audience. Next step for us is to acquire it. How we acquire it? We build out a good product, and then we put it in front of the players that have already played similar products. They will compare it. They should compare it. Like when for example, in our marketing, we always say that we don't want to compare our game to Pokemon. No matter how much we say it, players will do it. They will compare the game to Pokemon. But in this case, they won't compare it to Pokemon, they will compare it to Poke MMO.
mm,
So
mm.
now our enemy isn't a huge multi-millionaire company, multi-billionaire company. Now it's a indie project that isn't able to push out content as fast as we can. But that indie project has an audience that is almost 10x of what we have. So
Mm,
the potential is very big, the risk is very less. And for
right.
us, that's the way of acquiring users, and that's the way of creating token price. Like for Spellborn, the token will only get you more and more utility and more use case in the future, simply because there are so many things that are possible with in-game items, with the mechanics that we can build. And right now, our team's focus has been to kind of prepare for what comes after the token, because once we launch the token, next thing would be what's next.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
that's what our team is doing. We are building out what we what we feel that the players will love, and these players are mostly from Web 2, Web 3, both. But we talk about the token itself and the speculator part. It's the guild tokens, it's the staking of the token to get in almost free money, because you'd stake the token. It's literally, you hold the token, you stake it, you get glory points. You can spend those glory points on consumable items. These are items like, I get a XP boost for 15 minutes. So for a game where players grind for a whole day to you level up a single monster, that boost is very very important. They will spend money on it, so someone would be willing to buy it from you. Now all of a sudden, you had bond tokens, you got a free item by holding those bond tokens, and you can sell that item to get more bond tokens, which you can stake further, create a loop, and all of a sudden you're the biggest like holder in the game economy. So the way we have designed the game, the way we have tried to target the audience, I think it is a very very viable way for many games, is to build out a good product, then target your core audience, and that core audience can be a group of 100 players or even 1,000. Have those 100 players give you feedback, and make sure that they are your target audience. And this is something that a lot of web3 games can take wrong. Like when you
Right.
announce a web3 game, the shiny phenomena attracts a lot of players that are not interested in your game. A lot of people that are not interested in your game, what they're interested in is the shine. They're
Mhm.
interested in the new thing, and they're interested in making money and then moving on to another project, what we call kind of degens, or what we call a lot of votes. So
Right.
essentially, it's important for games to know who their target audience is. It's important for games to know that the players that are playing their game are actually their target audience. And once they
Right.
know that they've gotten that audience, they can use that audience to spread further, because word of mouth is the best form of marketing. And as the game grows, of course, that will affect the token price. It won't be that instantaneous that web3 loves, but it will be gradual and it will be stable for both web2 and web3 to be able to love the game as well as the token.
Right. And I love your the way you're thinking, your thought processes go see. It's like it's almost like we're leaving breadcrumbs, like very small amount of breadcrumbs on like what do we do in crypto? And it's like introducing trading, right? Like on a very, very minuscule level, right? And I think this is exactly how we do see that organic momentum, at least people getting on board into crypto. And I feel even right now, right? I'm taking a look at like some of these gaming projects, and I realized that, for example, I'll use Fableborn as another example. I think what I loved about Fableborn was they did a play test first, right? Like they got people familiar with the game, right? There was no incentive. Maybe people just got FOMO on the timeline on like, hey, try our game out, et cetera, et cetera. And because of how well that has performed, again, they were able to achieve that positive sentiment off the bat. Now, I feel for Fableborn and where they are today, it was just about maintaining that positive sentiment by not risking things and pulling triggers like announcing a token or whatever it may be. But I do believe Fableborn is now heading towards down that route, if I'm not mistaken. But right, my point is with this is it's cool to see how this breadcrumb strategy kind of works, for at least gaming projects that have a solid game to start off with, right? Which comes back to why in my previous question to you of making sure the product is good, making sure that the game is good. If you don't have that, it's almost nearly impossible to get any sort of traction from there moving forward, right? So I love this. And man, time is always just flying on these streams. I don't even realize we have only about 10-ish or so minutes left. I want to talk more about Spellborn here for the remainder of today's stream. And again, shout out to everyone here in the chat. Comments are flying. People are chatting here in the chat section of today's stream. So shout out to those that are making time today. Much, much love. But Ghosty, I want to hone in because in the very intro of today's stream, you talked about some updates, a lot of cool things, of course, happening here in the coming weeks, coming months, in the next quarter or so. What are we looking at as far as updates today? And maybe if we can just kind of reiterate what you were sharing here in the very intro of today's stream, that'd be awesome too. But Gosi, please go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of updates, uh, right now our team has been mostly testing out things that players complained about. So, players complained about that, it takes a lot of time to level up your monsters. We don't want to make it too easy, but we still want to, we want to create a good user experience. And while making sure that, the effort values still stay there. So the first thing that is, of importance this week is the XP formula, and changes to that, changes to the damage formula, nerfing a few monsters here and there based on how they're performing in PvP. And since we, introduced up to level 36, so all of a sudden there's so much content for the players to, kind of grasp. So till now, for the past week, it was mostly about fixes related to the battle system, improvements and changes related to the damage formulas and the XP curves and everything to make sure that a new player doesn't get tired out easily and they still want to play the game. They still want to spend time in the game. Secondly, the fourth era of PvP leagues has also started, which improves upon the elo rewards from bot battles and so on. And after that, this is kind of, where we are kind of moving towards finalizing on how the structure of our PvP leagues work. So, for example, this era we're focusing on fixing elo rewards. Next era we'll probably be focusing on 2v2 battles as well, and make sure that those leagues are also ready. And once they are, then we turn on the switch for token rewards. Like every 14 days, we'll distribute tokens to top players and PvP. So anyone who hasn't really started into getting into PvP, they should, because it's a very very high reward low risk situation. Like if you're bad at it, you can still play the game, you can train over time. But if you're good at it, you get tokens by being good at a game. So it's free money. Like, play the game, enjoy it. And then we talk about other smaller things. So follower cosmetics, like you can see hearts popping out of my monster. So these kind of cosmetics we've introduced for players that have very very good monsters. Like they have 300 plus innate monsters, but they don't look special. So we want players to be able to make sure that their monsters look special. So these cosmetics will be limited. Sorry. So these cosmetics will be limited, and players would be able to purchase these by staking the token, then spending glory points. So you're not really spending money on them, you're just getting them for free. And these are limited edition mint. So like when the hearts one gets launched, the supply will be like 100 or 200. So there will only be 100 200 hearts cosmetics. Only 100 200 monsters will have these cosmetics, and these are like detachable items, so you can attach and detach it to any monster you want. So these kind of things we have been preparing for our glory store, which will be kind of a dynamic market based on the player demand and spending. The prices of those items in glory points will change over time. So if there's a lot of demand, all of a sudden the prices will increase. This will make sure that like if there's no demand and there's so many items in the game, the players aren't really getting those things for free. And so it's kind of a very very important structure, and a very complex one, but we're almost done with that. The next part that is very very important is the multi monster battles. So this multi-monster feature allows us to add so many new things. So the first is new difficulty curves. You can encounter 5 different monsters at the same time. So all of a sudden, you had to defeat one single monster that was level 6. Now you have to defeat 5 who are level 6. But the problem is that you can only attack one of them, while all 5 of them can attack you at the same time. So it increases the difficulty curve for a lot of players who feel that normal grinding can get boring. So it kind of provides challenges from time to time, and those challenges are what players are already familiar with, but they kind of also make things more interesting. So it can be used to add hordes, it can be used to add 2v2 battles, so you can play with your friends, actually play with your friends, like you and me can join a battle together in a league, and if
Whoa.
we can be best players. And those leagues will also have token rewards. So you can play single player modes, you can play 2v2, you can play 3v3, and then there's also other sort of short term events that we want to add, where multiple friends can gather together, create a party, and they can battle against a very big monster. So it's like 3 versus 1, 4 versus 1, and so on. So it's a
Mm,
lot of
mhm.
experiments possible. So that's another thing. And the first version of it should go live next week. So Hordes
Dope.
should go live next week. Then we talk about the experience formula that should go live this week, most likely. If we talk about mining in the game, so you should be able to mine rocks very very soon for crystals, because a lot of players complain that they ran out of crystals very often, and they want to spend time in the game, but they can't because they don't really have any crystals, they don't have any gold nuggets left, and they have to wait for another 24 hours.
Right,
So
right.
to make sure that the players don't have to wait, we are introducing mining, and they can enter dungeons, they can mine rocks. These rocks can give you either gems, or they can give you even gold nuggets if you're lucky. And these gems you can then craft to create crystals to get back in a grind. So it's kind of a infinite loop of things you can do, the what's next formula. Like right now I'm catching monsters, what's next? I could mine rocks, I can collect crystals, and I can create prismatics, which I can also sell on the market. So mining is also in testing right now and should go live by end of this month. Fishing is also in testing, but it will go live next month. When we talk about hordes, that should go live next week. Apartment staking is currently in testing, as I've mentioned. Like the Glory store is very very complex, so we're still working on testing it out and making sure that everything is correct, because it can make or break the game economy. So it's very very important. But once that is done, then apartment staking should go live. We're already done with our tests for the contracts and everything, and the flow works perfectly. So players will be able to stake their apartments, they will be able to stake tokens, and they will be able to get free items, almost free cosmetics, skins from time to time, even monsters that are very very rare. For example, you could bid using glory points to get specific monsters that aren't found in the wild. So those kind of things. Then our team has also been working on the marketplaces to prepare for TGE. So those are also almost done. Heroes should be testing those out this week. I think they already have access to that. But yeah, so these things are within the game itself, that are going to be going live in the next 2 to 3 weeks, with maybe the token. Like the token will probably go live either this month or next month, and all these features are kind of combining towards it. So when the token goes live, we'll do those short-lived events with 3 players versus 1, and we'll put in high rewards. All of a sudden, multiple crypto degens, they can participate in short-term events where they don't have to create a squad. They can battle against a very difficult enemy, and they can get rewards for it. So we're building the game to be casual, the game to be fun, the game to be cozy, but it is also in a way available to people who love fast-paced events, fast-paced gameplay, and so on. So we're making improvements everywhere. Talking about platforms, so Windows, Mac, and Linux testing should go live this month for holders. iOS and Android release, we have made significant improvements for iOS to reduce crashes. We are preparing those builds for public release, so that should also happen most likely this month, if not the first week of next month. And what else? So I covered marketplaces, raids,
Too much. No, I'm just
apartment
kidding.
taking.
A lot, man. Really quickly, Ghosty, just a question on the like players being able to play with each other. Will XP be shared amongst these two players, or will there be like separate, like depending on what each player contributed to that match?
It depends upon how much you contribute. So if
Okay,
someone
okay.
is, like if you carry someone, they're not really getting free XP.
Right, right.
But it's a way for them to be able to participate in more difficult battles. Like what happens is, whoever does the last attack gets all the XP, like most of it. So
Mm.
someone could carry someone and they can do almost all the damage and then let the weaker person make the last attack. So they get a lot of experience.
Mm.
But it can be very, very interesting in multiple ways. And our focus has been to make sure that it is open ended. So all these things that we're designing, they are very, very open ended. Like they're based on
Right.
flags, and we can experiment a lot of things related to this. In terms of how we are designing things, till now players have seen events that are related to many games. For the future events, our focus is on creating events that are actually actionable in the game
Mm.
itself. So like
Mm.
it shouldn't just be a 2048 game. It could be something that is like, defeat this specific big monster and do the most amount of damage and enter a leaderboard. So those kind
Right.
of events
Right.
where you're
Yeah.
actually playing the game and not just kind of grinding and then playing a mini game, because
Yeah.
some players love that. But we want the players to be actually involved in the game more often, and
Right.
players like that, they just want more methods to do. So that's what we are working on. Once all these things are prepared, then we also have been acquiring a few players from PokeMMO, but our goal is to just double down on Web2 marketing. So for that, we're creating a lot of content, a lot of gameplay content that will be very, very shareable, that will be very, very cute, cozy, and essentially help us attract those players from Web2, primarily from PokeRogue and PokeMMO.
Yeah. Man, this is I can't wait for that duo feature because now this allows me to rely on people like Ghosty to carry me. So please let me take the last hit, Ghosty. I need the XP bad. Um, oh man. First of all, I know we're approaching the hour mark here on today's stream, but guys, if you want the alpha, just listen back to the last 15 minutes of today's stream. These streams are always recorded. And man, as always, Ghosty, love swear that's why I look forward to these streams because I get to learn constantly every single time, get your takes, get your perspective on things, but also making sure that the community, the audience watching it today, they get the alpha as well. So we're hitting multiple birds with one stone today. Well, Gosi, I know I asked you it already, but is there anything last minute you want to share with the audience before we wrap up?
I think mostly it's for players who are currently playing the game and testing out the XP and damage stuff. So please test it out. Please, battle often in PvP, in regular battles, and let us know what the pain points are, because what we are trying to do is fix all these features, fix all these issues before we bring the game in front of Web2 users. And we want to make sure that those users are do not face these issues from day one, because it can be a big turn off. And yeah, just test out the game as much as possible, give us feedback, because we are constantly working and making sure that this is the best product that we can create, and then bring more players in from Web 2 and Web 3 both.
Let's go, guys. You already hear it from Ghosty himself. If you aren't already, guys, follow Ghosty. First of all, his ads is in the title of today's stream, and then second, make sure you are following the Spellborne accounts because there's gonna be plenty more streams and spaces just like this one today, right? So with that being said, Ghosty, thank you so much once again for the past hour. It's been phenomenal having these discussions with you every single, I was gonna say every single week, but every bi-week. And guys, to everyone here in the audience, I hope everyone has a fantastic, beautiful rest of their day and we will see you guys at the next stream or at the next space. Have a beautiful one, guys, and peace out.